You're asking yourself the question, aren't you scared you're going to find spiders in here? Yes. I have a lot of yarn, and it's not all mine. Well, I guess it's mine now, because I'm not just dealing with my stash, which is below you and behind me. I'm also dealing with my late mother's. I think I need to do a stash down. Stashbust? Engage in hedonistic knitting and other yarn-centric activities? We can go with that. My job this week is to go through Mum's stash and to figure out what I want to keep and what'll need to be donated, and go through my stash and figure out what's staying and what's going, and if it doesn't spark joy, it's not staying. I know of at least one large local charity destash that happens in the spring, Ujama Grandma's, which fundraises for the Stephen Lewis Foundation, but there's also the possibility I could move some of this along to Women in Need or one of the hospital charities that knits for preemies or something. The goal is to move it along so it's not taking up valuable space here. We'll go through the works in progress, both mine and Mum's, and get an idea of what's there and whether it's something I want to continue working on. From there, try to come up with some future projects and a few plans. My goal isn't to get down to zero, but at least make the stash a little bit more manageable and enjoy the things I've got while I can. Basically use a three-pronged approach of destash, stash down, and stash bust. I did a big yarn inspection a couple of years back when I saw a moth fluttering in my hobby room, and in the pandemonium to secure the stash, it occurred to me that I have a lot of yarn. If we're going to be truthful, in my opinion, it's a stupidly massive amount of yarn. I've often wondered if I've reached SABLE, stash acquisition beyond life expectancy. From the bins I pulled out of the utility room, Mum lived that dream. My stash isn't exactly large enough to be a yarn store in its own right, but there's been a lot of collecting over the past 20 years. Considering I'm currently qualifying as middle-aged and gearing up for that time of my life when I annoy all my younger relatives with lists of friends they don't know who've died, the idea of simply hoarding and not getting to enjoy using my stash is somewhat overwhelming. Because after age 45, you never know when you're going to be the friend who died. Besides, I don't know about you, but I can't afford a huge, constantly changing homemade wardrobe with new items being made every week or two. Considering I didn't buy a lot of clothing in the store prior to being on YouTube, over-consuming handmade clothing feels somewhat hypocritical. Feels almost wasteful and indulgent to me whether or not anyone else considers me a cutting-edge influencer. I've got an idea. How about I influence you to buy less stuff and knit your own damn sweater? Trust me, if you're just here for the snarky plus-size sewing commentary, just wait till I get to the knitting and crochet drama. Fibre artists can be mean. Nice people, but mean. We can take some time to make other kinds of clothing too that will go along with the jeans, shirts, and dresses, like cozy hand knits and accessories, possibly an eventual emotional support chicken or duck. Unless, of course, we've since moved on to other animals, in which case capybaras might be fun. Now, the one thing that I figured out when I was going through a lot of Mum's sewing stashes, and I say stashes because she uses all sorts of multiple little boxes, is that she has a tendency to keep things together. So we're going to find works in progress or works that never got started in here. So for instance, if I ever need to make a baby cardigan with ducks on it, or a tree, I'm gonna be set. Mum kept all of her stuff with the other stuff. Hello, kitty. I have a tendency to keep all of my books together unless I'm actively working on a project, in which case I will usually these days, take a photo of it and refer to it on my iPad or my phone or my computer or whatever happens to be handy. Just because if I'm working on something, in this case, it looks like it's probably from the 90s, 80s. If this was, say, from the 70s or 60s, which I have found some of those around here, I probably wouldn't want to continue handling the booklet just because it could be delicate. Oh. I was expecting boxes of acrylic, and I might still find boxes of acrylic, but this is wool. Okay, patent super wool. You're actually wool, okay? Wool. Patents Astra. Acrylic, isn't it? 100% acrylic. So we'll sort this later. Oops, that missed. I just interrupted the moment that this cat has been waiting for weeks now, because she has been eyeing my yarn for a sweater I have been knitting. And right now, I just took her out of a bin of being surrounded by yarn. I'm sorry, but not sorry at the same time. Bunch of knitting books. The things I found that will be getting protected. Anchor Huck Weaving. So basically making designs on things with yarn. The other is Beehive Steps to Knitting. Pattons and Baldwin's Limited. And this is rather tattered. Yeah, Claude, I need a date check on a sweater. This is my thing here. It's missing the back cover. That's why I can't find a date. I'm thinking maybe 60s, 50s maximum. Could be 40s, but I don't think so. Smocking sampler. My mother loved to do smocking. We have Bonanza Fentex acrylic. And it feels acrylic. Knitting needles. Lots and lots of knitting needles. I've actually got a lot of these things. I need to go through and see if there's any that I need to actually replace out of mine. Some of these arrow needles are really good. They're nice and slick. Others, not so much. I'm one of those people who likes knitting with slick needles. I've also been looking for really long needles. Long enough that I can stick it under my armpit and be able to knit with it. So I'll be going through this. Okay, so pretty much everything that's in here, it's all baby wool. So I'm just going to acrylic baby wool. So because I don't really do a lot of knitting for babies, and when I do, I often use wool rather than baby yarn. That is to say acrylic yarn. This can go on to somebody who will actually use it. I know for a fact that these were wound by me. There was a time somewhere in the 1990s when Mom would hand me something like this and tell me to turn it into this. Some sort of discoloration on there. Do not know what it is. Okay. This is mittens. Mittens that are almost finished, actually. Put this with the works in progress or unfinished knit projects, because somebody's going to need a mitten at some point. Okay. You are some kind of wool, because I can tell. This. Impeccable. I'm going to put it in the maybe. Oh, hello, Baycrest sale. I've got a bunch of you in black. A sweater. Whew. Smells dusty. Took a little bit of a lunch break. I am back to look at the UFOs WIPs. Okay, so it says LOK1205. I don't know whether that's a particular kit number of some sort, but we've got natural and teal. We've got red or burgundy. So that is gorgeous. That looks like an entire kit. We have a whole bunch of teal. 75% acrylic, 25% wool. It's like a sweater's quantity, so I might keep that because I do want to make more sweaters. UFOs WIPs books. There's about, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them here. Mom really liked WIPs. She was really into ski sweaters and stuff. And this, not surprised to find this, but it's in addition to a few other books that she had that Dad gave me when Mom passed. So these will be going along with the other books. So yeah, all this stuff at the bottom, it's all Elena. It's a great big bucket of Elena. Doesn't feel all that great. Yeah. This will get set aside. And aside from Mom's WIP pile, her unfinished knitting projects, that's pretty much Mom's stash. So we've got a box of stuff that's about DK through to RN weight that can probably shuffle into my stash, as well as the UFOs WIPs. Possibly a little bit of Elena, but definitely not the whole thing. It can go to somebody else to work with. I'll probably enjoy it too. It's not like it doesn't have any wool content. It just, yeah, I don't think I'll be using it. When I was cleaning up after the mothpocalypse, did I do an inventory? No. I just made sure everything was put in plastic and treated to their turn in the Hotel Frigidaire. I've kept to segregating my yarn since, because there's always the chance I'll miss something, and the next thing I know, the little critters have made a meal out of my mitten yarn. They really seem to like the Knit Picks palette. You notice that I don't display my yarn on an aesthetic yarn wall? That's because of moth PTSD. I see other YouTubers with yarn walls and I get anxiety. I've also seen the cats bring a moth into the house, or one get in through the sunroom and beeline through the kitchen to the basement stairs. It's like they know that there's yarn in here somewhere. Not long after Mothapalooza, we moved, and we had to move the stash. That was a lot of hefting IKEA cube shelf inserts and plastic cube bags full of yarn up and down flights of stairs. It was not pleasant, let me tell you, particularly the acrylic. I'm positive that stuff multiplies like troubles when you're not looking. I've never been of the opinion that one should seriously limit their hobbying materials. I know some folks are of the opinion that you should only buy what you're going to use immediately, and I admire that thinking, but it's not for me. I get that minimalism is in, whether it's due to the current general environment of austerity or not, but I believe in stashing up a bit during times of plenty just for these sorts of situations. You could say it's the knock-on effects of having had grandparents who lived through the Great Depression and World War II rationing, and parents who kept their family going through the 80s recession, and the husbeast and I surviving every other boom and bust since. It's really very simple. If I finish knitting a pair of socks, I don't necessarily want to drop everything to go to a store for the next project, particularly a craft-specific store. And woe betide I want to start a new project after business hours when said stores are closed. I'm happy to have a variety of yarns and materials to choose from at my leisure, particularly if I've managed to hit the yarn store when the larger brand names are on sale because a new color or fiber collection is coming out and I can get good wool for less money. I've noticed hand paints that would have sold for $17 to $25 per skein pre-pandemic are now selling for upwards of $30. I better be getting my money's worth out of that knitting experience. Kitty. There's a cat bed over there. And there's a kitty mat over there. How about you go lie down? Please don't let there be spiders. I saw something dangling and I thought for a moment it was a spider, and I came very close to yeeting the currant cake across the room. I actually liked the way this cotton worked up, so that's why I bought more, because it's very rare that I find a cotton that I actually like to work with on my hands. So I believe there's some pattern stuff like this, multicolor stuff that would be fun to play around with, but I think there's also a couple of solid color things in here as well. Most of my acrylic was either bought for specific things or when I was just getting started and had no real direction, or ability to choose good yarn. I mean, if you want me to post this stuff up in small bits for my supporters, I can do that, but I just don't think it's very entertaining. The things I'm donating? Cheap, bog standard acrylics, mostly baby yarn bought when I was first starting out. Also a big bag of standard and fad acrylics that spent a lot of time in the crawl space of our old house. I have no need for boucle or eyelash yarn right now. It being in the crawl space for more than 10 years tells me I'm not going to use or miss it. There's some other stuff, a couple of mandala cakes I'm never going to use, bits and bobs from old projects. Also 2 blankets, or at least could be made into blankets. I bought a few balls of currant cakes in this blue and white colorway and lost interest in the granny stitch blanket a few rows in. About a year later or so, Mum fell in love with the same damn yarn at Michael's and insisted on buying it for the same damn project, despite me offering to just give her my already in progress blanket. So there's a lot of yarn here for someone to just pick up and start using, because I think most, if not all of it, is the same darn dye lot. The other project is some planned pooling yarn I wasn't really in love with from the start and lost interest in fairly quickly. Yarn bought during a sale so someone else can hopefully have fun with it, and I won't feel bad about it leaving the house. What I'm keeping. I have a cube of miscellaneous cottons and acrylic blends because you never know when you want to make a market bag or what have you. There's a cube of straight up Red Heart Super Saver I'd bought with the express purpose of doing things like granny squares and other small projects. I have acrylic for 2 crocheted sweaters, a straight up contemporary hexagram cardigan, and one inspired by a celestial duster made by fellow YouTuber Prickly Alpaca. Both of those are in the want to make category. 3 of what I consider dopamine blankets because they're rather bright and will be nice to work on in the middle of winter when it's cold and you need color. 1 for the husbeast, made from currant spice cake, rather lovely green. This first bit worked up fairly fast, but I put it aside because other projects took priority. Planned pooling neon blanket using Red Heart neon stripes, aka the planned pooling nightmare. Despite the name, it's actually kind of fun seeing the pattern emerge in colors I used to wear on socks back in the 80s. And the Sunburst Granny Square blanket from Not a Crawl Crochet. I'd picked up the retro stripe yarn thinking it was planned pooling like the neon, and it really isn't. But it makes some fantastic granny squares, of which I have many. I may have already made enough for a blanket, but I have skeins aplenty. There's also the remains of 2 balls of granny square yarn I picked up to review and never finished using, so that's something that might be good for a laugh one week. See if my 2 skeins make a lap blanket for the cats or something. There's also a few balls of yarn for an Overlook Hotel blanket. That's based on the carpeting inside the Overlook Hotel in the movie The Shining. We'll see if it goes anywhere. It's a unique construction, so I'm kind of intrigued, but I'm not totally bought in on it. Next, we'll take a quick skim through what I consider my stranded knitting stash, basically smaller gauge yarns that are great for doing small stranded projects. And then we'll go on to the larger part of the stash, which is the sock yarn and spinning fiber. Took yesterday and went through both Mum and Mai's unfinished projects, and then I took the rest of the day to drink tea and knit because I was feeling pretty rough. I don't know if I inhaled a lot of dust or something else from the bins, but my throat was sore and I was a wee bit short of breath, and I still am today. The husbeast reminded me that Mum was a smoker when she did a lot of her knitting, so it's possible some of the weird smell was nicotine that hadn't had a chance to air out. I quit smoking back in the early 2000s, but my stash had a good 15 or more years of airing out in a well-ventilated, non-smoking household. Mum's stuff was put into bins and stored in various basements and furnace rooms, so it could be nicotine or various other household smells. So hopefully wherever I donate the yarn will give it a good airing out rather than pitching it in a landfill, because I don't have the space to do it here. It's a lot of mostly acrylic yarn. So today's job is to go through the 8 to 12 bins in my stash that aren't mostly acrylic. Sock yarn, spinning fiber, hand-spun, and commercial yarns of other weights, I think. I do have a pretty good idea of what's here because these are the things I sift through the most, usually when trying to find a nice yarn for a Victorian shawl or a capelet or other things, which I would like to do more of. I prefer to work with nice stuff. There's everything from commercial sock yarns and indie dyes all sort of jumbled up together here. I generally go for the more sturdy sock yarns for socks rather than the indie hand paints, mostly because, as I think I mentioned, you can get a hole in certain indie bases if you just look at it the wrong way. And I find this funny because another knitting YouTuber recently mentioned wanting to knit more socks and even using the really nice stuff she's been warned not to use because it gets holes. And yeah, hi, it's me. I'm that knitter. It's me, telling you to use the sturdy stuff for socks. I get the whole feeling of YOLO and wanting to use that fine merino 2-ply because it's so gorgeous. But I also remember spending 2 or 3 weeks knitting a sock that was worn precisely once before it fell apart. I was pretty crushed because it was a beautiful lace pattern. Holes are going to happen, yes, but it would be nice if they happened a little later down the line when you've had the chance to enjoy the sock for a little while. Because this sock wasn't worn in a hiking boot or anything. It was just normal wear that Croix, Regia, Lang Yawal Online, or the late great Zitron Trekking could usually withstand for about a couple of years before they inevitably shrink from one too many washings, or, you know, become the husband's favorite socks. He doesn't develop holes, he develops craters. And then he gets really disappointed when I tell him I'll just have to knit him a new sock. I mean, it's good to know that your work's appreciated, right? I do once in a while take a flyer on something that's specifically meant to be socks but is made from a hand paint. And things go flying. I recently picked up a yarn from Polka Dot Creek, local store in Dyer, meant to make self-striping socks. So I'm not immune to the pretty yarns. I just try to knit the bulk of my sturdy socks from slightly more sturdy sock yarn and try to find other things to make with the fragile stuff. I have a bunch of things to put away that I pulled from the freezer. I made sure that everything was bagged and photographed. I brought my computer down, it's right below you, so I can perhaps enter things on Ravelry and check it against what's already there, because I know some of my yarns already entered back when I was a young knitter who thought they might be able to keep running inventory. It could still happen. I'm also keeping my eyes out for a few things I was positive I had in the collection, but I don't recall seeing in like ages. I'm going to try and keep similar things together as much as possible, so I always know where yarns of the same size are located, gauge, and I guess brand. Not as concerned with organizing by color. Leftover sock yarn is a lost cause. I have 2 ongoing scrap yarn projects that I usually add to from the bin, but the bucket remains. If I ever have a spare cube bag, I may move things in there, possibly put it somewhere to get nice and chilly, kill anything that might have found it when it was hanging out in the utility room behind you that I'm not showing you. That said, leftover sock yarn makes great linings for things like mittens, mitten linings, hat linings. You just have to be willing to work on small needles and take some measurements. But for the most part, if you find a wool mitten itchy, make a sock yarn lining from some leftover merino. And I know some folks say to use alpaca, but I'm that one person in the crowd who's wound up itchy as all heck from a couple of alpaca blends. So sock yarn is my preference for lining. I don't tend to look at the sock yarn leftovers. These guys, minus the cotton. I tend to use the cotton as drive bands for my spinning wheel. I don't tend to look at these as, well, remnants of single skeins. They are a collective in their own right, and I'm probably going to have to figure out a way to reflect that in my Ravelry tallies. I know that Claudia and Micah of Engineering Knits both started beekeeper's quilts, and I just can't be arsed. And I don't know if that's because I don't particularly like short rows. I turn enough socks on my own so the mystique is lost on me, or whether it's because I only follow the crowd at weird times, like I never got into Degrassi or 90210 or Buffy, things my other Gen X and early Xennial friends were all psyched for and hyped up for at the drop of a hat. I was a Star Trek, X-Files, Twin Peaks girl, with minor diversions into Forever Night and Max Headroom. So maybe I just don't like the hype of Hexapuff blankets. I'm almost thinking I should start one, though, if for no other reason than to use up some of my wee shrapnel scraps of fabric as stuffing. Speaking of hype, YouTube's added new stuff to ye old call to action, so I guess we'll be asking you to not only like, comment, and subscribe, but also hype the video if the button shows up down below. Sometimes it doesn't. It's horribly inconsistent and only available for like the first week that the video's been out, but if you see it, smash it. Myself, I'd just like to thank the members of my craft coven, Patreon supporters, and channel members because they help make all of this possible. You folks know who you are, and now everyone else does too. If you'd like to show your commitment to Sparkle Motion, and yes, I know it's an obscure reference that will cause a very small fraction of you to snort a beverage out your nose, channel memberships are located down below the video on most platforms, and the link to Patreon is in the description. Not in the first comment, because that's not the description of the video, and I know some of you are going to look for it there. For those of you watching with a TV, you're going to have to fiddle with the remote for channel memberships, or just head to Patreon. I didn't make it easy for you. Koklo isn't exactly as easy and intuitive to spell as, say, Smith. If you're not into that sort of shenanigans, completely understand. I'm just glad to have you along for the ride, and I hope that you stay to the end, because with all of this yarn, it's going to be a wild one. As wild a ride as vicariously exploring someone's yarn stash gets, I guess. Are you having fun? I have cats. I have approximately an hour and a half before the husbeast has to get picked up, so we'll see if I can get anything done in that amount of time. Left a little late today. I'm going to take off my microphone and set you up someplace, and we're just going to take some pictures and try and get a tally. And at the end of it, I will probably spend some time on my butt on the sofa upstairs, adding all of this stuff into Ravelry at my leisure, because I put a lot of this stuff, thank you Nancy, into Ravelry earlier on, and going through all of the stuff that needs to go into a cube into Ravelry was taking about an hour, and there's only about 10 things here. So, because I want to get done sometime this century, I will see if I can maybe tilt you down so you can get a good view of the yarn as I'm taking pictures with my phone. All right, let's do it. Oh, and if you want to see into the bucket, I'm going to have to pick that up, aren't I? There's a lot here. It's a big bucket. It's filled to about there. And I just finished a sock last night, so there's going to be another thing in the bucket. More pink yarn to go in the bucket. Hi, I see you. No, you can't play with that. That is not for you. Cats. Basically emptied almost every single cube full of sock yarn onto the table. I was going through them bin by bin, or at least cube by cube, and then I realized as I got to this and this that I've got Croy all over the place. I've got, I believe this one here is Cascade Heritage Hand Paint all over the place, because it's here. It's here. I think this is a hand dye over here, and this is an indie dye over here. I believe this is another indie dye over here. In fact, I think it's what's supposed to replace one of the Husbeast's cratered socks, because it looks great in the skein, but it'll be yarn barf in the sock, and he likes that sort of thing. It's fine. But what it tells me is that when I was putting this together, I was just ramming things into bags and then shoving them into cubes. That's not the way this has to go. If things are going to get used, I need to know where everything is. So what I'm doing, because I can't just keep buying more plastic cubes, and everything is in plastic anyways, what I'm going to do is I've got a few of my IKEA inserts down on the floor, and I might even press these ones into service. And what I'm doing is when I find something like Croy, pitch it into the bin that I've decided is the Croy bin. When I find a Heritage hand paint, it will go with the other Heritage hand paints. Lion brand, same thing. They get all put together. Knit picks, I've got some Felici over here, and I'm pretty sure there's more somewhere else, like a couple of 50-gram balls. They'll all go together. So basically what I'm doing, you know, things like Michael's Perfect Pear yarn by, I think it's Loops and Threads, whole bag of it. I may even have more of it, because I was pretty sure that I had a few of these. And that's, oh, those are 100 grams per ball. They're just a very compact 100 grams per ball. So what I want to do is kind of separate the different commercial stuff so that it's by manufacturer, and then I am going to make sure that my indie stuff is all together, or at least separated out from the commercial stuff. And that way I should be able to go, you know what? I want to do something like make a nice shawl with this expensive Silky Merino single by some fiber company I can't see the name of, but dang, the stuff is gorgeous when you take a look at it outside of the bag. There's also a Olan sock right next to it, this almost Kool-Aid or Freezy colored thing that's absolutely gorgeous with its pink and its blue and its speckles and stuff like that. I want to be able to go, you know what, I want to go for the woolly bully instead of going for another hard-wearing Cascade superwash yarn. So that is going to be what I am doing probably for most of this evening, is separating all of these yarns out by manufacturer. So all my Malabrigo is together, and all of my Socks That Rock is together. This is going to take a while. But I think everything will look better when I'm done. And once I've got more shelving up, what may just happen is instead of things getting dumped into plastic cubes, I might just put the bags up on the shelf so they're a little more visible. The main thing is that things that are not seen do not get used and wind up just gathering dust in a bin in the utility room. Things that are out and can be actively taken down and looked at and used will actually get used. And that's the main thing. I want to make sure that I'm actually using the yarns that I have, so that when I go to a place where they have yarn, I'm not going, ooh, I need to pick up more yarn. I'll actually be able to see that I have quite a lot of yarn that I really should be using. And if I do want to pick up a new skein of Woolly Time yarns, because I went to a Fibre festival with Ashley and my friend Nancy, I can do that because I will hopefully have been using stuff in my stash to make some room. Trust me, if anything's going to get given away, it'll probably be the Croy. I'm sorry. I'm not destashing a lot of this stuff. A lot of this stuff was stuff that I wanted to be able to have for a rainy day in case I want to make a really special thing for myself or for a member of my family. And if I can make sure that I'm doing more knitting and crocheting, that should actually be a reality. So, guess I've got my work cut out for me. I have to take a quick break for dinner and to get the husbeast from work, but I think that this is what I'm going to be working on after dinner tonight. Fun. Made it through the sock yarn, and honestly that was probably the most complicated part of inventorying my stash. I'm not going to say the final numbers are absolutely final, but if something's not here, it's probably a couple of skeins I set aside for something. Because I'm known for setting aside a few things for myself, otherwise it would get used for a family member. So those have now been put into the main stash. My sock yarns are now divided into small indie dyers, larger indie to established business dyers, capital C commercial yarn companies, mostly European with some North American brands thrown in, and stuff you might find at Michael's, or was there and has since been discontinued. You know, your Croy, Loops and Threads, Lion Brand, Bernat, all those things. As I work through the stash, I'll start merging all of those things together into less bins. I know some of the larger indie to established business could be considered capital C commercial, like Madeline Tosh or Malabrigo. I guess I could also think of it as the out of business or sold to private equity bin, as in Lorna Laces is no longer a company and Madeline Tosh is now owned by Jimmy Bean's Wool, which is owned by a private equity company called Local Craft, I think. Anyhow, there's enough there that they could all flow over between the different bins if need be. I could try smushing things back into the plastic cubes, but I think the yarn will be safe enough in their bags, and it allows me to see them a little bit clearer through the plastic of the bins. I'm probably going to need to do another pass through the other cubes now that I have an idea how to proceed. That said, mitten yarn and sweater yarn really aren't my problems. The two biggest collections are sock yarn and fiber. So fiber is today's little job, and I should hopefully have some numbers for you when I'm done. As it is, I did the lace weight, all 12 skeins of it. That's all done. So I'm going to get working on the fiber, and I think I'll hand you off to Mare from 2 days ago with the results of diving into the unfinished objects. And no, you don't get to see the active works in progress. Not yet. That's for another episode. Editing Mare here. After going over the UFO and WIP footage, I'm going to release a separate video to my patrons and channel members with the As It Happened footage, edited for length because it took a while to go through everything. In the meantime, here's a short montage of all the projects, things I was working on, and Mum's unfinished objects. Enjoy! My stuff first. First we have an antique pattern from Columbia Yarns. It's a crocheted project bag. I sussed out the base as well as the first repeat of the pattern. Then it got put aside for a while. Next we have 2 knit socks that I made as prototypes for a design that I put together for the Scary Sock Knit Along years ago. I need to finish up the second socks. Also a tube with a toe on the end that was supposed to be a short row heel sock, so I need a second sock for that as well. The Royal Society Victorian capelet that I started in the past year or so. This may get finished or it may get frogged. It depends on whether or not I want to go back and try to figure out all the things I did to try and update the pattern for my size. The pie shawl designed by Elizabeth Zimmerman and intended for my sister-in-law. I just haven't had the time to work on this. So that would be something that I would really like to be able to find the time to do. This was supposed to be the Pulmu, P-U-L-M-U, pullover from Knit Pick / We Crochet. And if you go back far enough in my shorts, which there's only a few, so it's not very difficult, you'll find a short where I received wool from Knit Pick / We Crochet. This is what it was meant for. It may or may not get frogged because this was a slog. But maybe it could be a ranunculus. I think I put this aside because I wasn't sure whether or not I was finishing the Pulmu, and well, it's beige. And if I'm gonna make a ranunculus, I might as well make one that actually works for me and isn't just another beige ranunculus. Alright, here we have Mum stuff. First off, close your eyes if you don't like holes. Okay, this is a pink acrylic baby blanket. Very acrylic, very pink, has all sorts of yarn overs, so thus it has holes. That said, it's very soft, it just needs its ends woven in, and since Mum really liked knitting things for babies, it was probably made with a whole lot of love. So, it'll either go to somebody in the family who needs a baby blanket, probably not this generation, or it'll get held until somebody actually needs a baby blanket that was made with love. You can open your eyes now. Continuing the children's theme, we have a child's sweater in pieces. Not sure why it wasn't finished. Looks like it's a Sirdar pattern. Has little pandas on it. Kinda cute. This looks to be a sweater or sweater vest. Again, pink acrylic, cabled, almost looks like it's my size or maybe my brother's size. There are some notes about a cabled sweater vest of my brother's that was too short, so I don't know whether she was doing some sort of a mock-up or whether this was a version that she was making for me. Goodness only knows. There's also an ivory acrylic cabled tube that I have no idea what it's for. A woman's sweater or sweater vest in progress. Looks like it's from quite a long time ago because the pattern is from an old women's magazine. Kind of pretty, and the colors look like something Mum would have chosen either for herself or me. a white mohair scarf. Looks quite pretty, looks quite simple because it's just garter stitch. So it has gone into the freezer so that I can finish that up at a later date. And finally, a pair of mittens that I see Mum has dropped a stitch on down by the cuff. That's okay, that can either be fixed or just be re-knit, because mitts are pretty easy to knit. So I guess somebody will have warm fingers, possibly this year.
I was quietly protective of my heart to reassure that I couldn't break to pieces and be left alone once more. If you hadn't been so patient, you'd be easy to ignore. You put up with all my till you didn't anymore. And now I stand here calling at your door. Oh, now I stand here calling at your door. Yeah, I'm yours, anywhere you want. Yeah, I'm yours, and now we're singing. I have been too self-involved, been protective of my feelings, but somehow you made me fall. You got underneath the surface and you shattered every wall. And I know I got that feeling, there's no question anymore. And now I stand here calling at your door. Oh, now I stand here calling at your door. Yeah, I'm yours, anywhere you want. Yeah, I'm yours, and now we're singing. Of my heart to reassure that it couldn't break to pieces and be left alone once more. You got underneath the surface and you shattered every wall. And I know I got that feeling, there's no question anymore. And now I stand here calling at your door. Oh, now I stand here calling at your door. Yeah, I'm yours, anywhere you want. Yeah, I'm yours, and now we're singing.
Okay, so now I've had a chance to do a deep dive on the stash. I think I have some ideas of how to move forward. There's going to be more knitting and spinning on the channel. Go figure. Not that this is a bad thing since we're getting into colder weather. I do want to try keeping it relevant to the general themes of the channel, if there actually is one. I'm trying to build a cozy everyday fantasy wardrobe that's achievable by anyone, whether they're straight-sized or an extreme plus size like me. I'm so plus I'm extra. The sewing isn't going anywhere, it's just going to have the addition of some extra woolly content. Because again, while I like sewing, overconsumption is still overconsumption, whether you're buying clothing or making it. But for me, it means taking inspiration from all over the crafting timeline, not just churning out endless petite knit sweaters. I may start simple and work my way up, but I do want to explore and have fun with more vintage and antique patterns. It may be a stereotypical contemporary hexagon sweater, followed by a Victorian pair of muffatees and a shawl. I've got a cat who's actually trying to climb on you right now, which, cute, but also, you're sitting on a tripod. But maybe try something from the 1940s or 1960s stranded mittens like my granny used to make. Who knows where we'll go? Who knows where this cat will go? Maybe launched off the table. Tenderly, though. We have a tendency to think that those who came before us had basic rudimentary skills, or just made simple things, or left arcane directions, but more and more I'm coming to find that once you figure out the language, it starts to make sense. And they liked many of the same things we do now. We've just streamlined and built on their foundations, unfortunately, often at a cost to the environment. Oh, hello, puss. Other cat has entered the chat. Is there acrylic and superwash in my future? Yeah, of course there is. I'm living in 2025 when tariffs and inflation are causing havoc. Hi! But it's not the first time knitters, crocheters, and other crafters have gone through a rough spell. Sometimes what comes out of that adversity is iconic style. Just ask Retro Claude and she'll tell you about all those fantastic short sleeve 1940s sweaters that she loves. And they look fantastic on her, and someday I want to figure out how to size it up for me. There will come a time for more natural fibers. I always flash back to Bernadette Banner videos from sometime in the pandemic. I think there was one where she was bemoaning the loss of a season's worth of wool because think of the tweed. Generally, I think of the yarn. I'm hoping things can become more affordable so folks aren't as reliant on acrylic, barring things like allergies. The nice thing is that I already have lots of yarn, and of course there's more down here, and fiber down here that I can play with to explore the nooks and crannies of crafting history. Remember, I'm not panic crafting. We're going to enjoy this process. If new stuff wanders in, we'll add it to the list and figure out what to do with it. I have some UFOs I'm going to need to revisit so I can get them off my plate. The standouts are the Edwardian crafting bag, the pie shawl for my sister-in-law, and the Victorian capelet. I'm still not sure what to do about the fingering weight crocheted sweater. If you think I can actually soldier through and get it done, let me know in the comments, but I have doubts, particularly since I don't even remember what size I chose and whether the sweater would fit me at my current weight. I might have to look into making something else with the yarn, though that's a lot of stitching. I'm having trouble with a worsted weight work in progress I'm currently trying to get through. Fingering weight might just be a little over my head right now. There's also Mum's works in progress. I don't know what to do with the sweater attempts even she couldn't be arsed to finish, but I can finish the mittens and the mohair scarf. They're currently in timeout in the freezer. Lest anyone be disappointed at me not finishing those sweaters, Mum finished the sweaters she wanted to make. Prior to her passing, she completed 2 men's Lopi sweaters, one each for the husband and my brother. That the acrylic sweaters lingered indicated a loss of interest. Knitting wasn't Mum's passion. That was sewing. So let me know in the comments which works in progress you'd like to see more of, and if you like, what order. So now the yarn totals that you've been totally waiting patiently for and not just fast forwarding through the video to see. About 5 or 6 acrylic projects, so blankets, sweaters, etc., already pre-sorted into cubes to keep things together. 3 real wool sweaters, so my curling sweater, the husband's Irish wool sweater, and a Lopi kit. Also some Lopi leftovers that would make some wonderful accessories like a tam or maybe a hat, mitts, if, lined, because Lopi has a tendency to be a little bit itchy. I probably won't get to those sweaters anytime soon because I don't know the amounts that I will need to cover our bodies. We will see. Are you two fighting over there? Cats. Okay, so we've got miscellaneous yarns for mittens and hats, mostly stranded, no count done or really required as it doesn't take up much stash. It's just available if it's needed, and it's very possible that for some projects I might have to buy more yarn to be able to make up the difference. I've got 12 skeins of lace weight yarn of varying lengths, also a skein of luxury sport weight yarn that I'm including in there because I'll probably make it into a scarf or a shawl. It's that camel spin, I believe, from, I think it was Lorna's Laces? Could be wrong. Could be a different manufacturer. There's 2 balls of Kiviot waiting for the right project, and no, you can't see them because I haven't quite tracked them down. I believe that they are probably somewhere in that side of the basement on a shelf that I can't quite reach yet because there's a few things in front of it, but I do recall securing them before we left the other house, so they should be down here someplace, if not in a box from my old office at the other house. There's about 118 pairs of socks, sort of. That's about 118 100-gram portions or skeins of yarn. They could become socks or other items made from sock yarn, so mitts, hats, scarves, shawls, you name it. Croy and, pardon me if I mispronounce this, Scipius Invictus were counted in matched pairs to reach that total since they came in 50-gram balls. There's also 4.5 mismatched balls of Croy/Invictus and the partial skein 4-pack of heavyweight fingering yarn from Blue Moon Fibre Arts. I always thought that those would probably be a stranded project. Still waiting for the right one to come along. There are 60 packages of fiber, and it's going to be fun finding out what those are going to turn into, because spinning is definitely a mixture of choose your own adventure and surprise, it's yarn. You're never quite sure exactly what it's going to look like when it's done. I do have a small cube of hand spun, which basically has beautiful, gorgeous skeins of yarn that just haven't told me what they want to be yet. Like, I think there's a couple of sock weight yarns that I made, as well as a really lovely lace weight that's just waiting for the right shawl. So looking forward to seeing what those become. And of course, we've got a constantly growing bucket of sock yarn leftovers. These. The husband found more little leftover balls in a bag in the garage, so they've been put in zipper bags and yeeted into the freezer. Gonna have to keep those scrap yarn projects coming. You know, I was thinking it could be a lot worse. I've seen folks reporting yarn in the thousands, and this feels comparatively manageable. Comparatively manageable. It's less overwhelming without the 3 to 4 various sized bins of acrylic and miscellaneous other yarns to be donated from the combined stashes of both Mum and I, and packaging them up and putting them out of the way so that I can take them to wherever they're going to be donated kind of feels like a weight off my shoulders. We'll start worrying if companies decide I need to be on their PR list. That could be dangerous. If you want to keep up with the progress, remember to subscribe and maybe even play with that little bell icon down there to be sure you're alerted when I upload. If you want to see the stash inventory, or at least the stuff I've managed to get online, which is admittedly the lion's share of the stash, my name on Ravelry is Mare, just like the channel. Again, I didn't make it easy for you. People often think I'm mispronouncing or misspelling Marie, and considering I'm the one with the name, you'd think I'd be right. Just move that I a little bit farther to the left. So many of life's problems could be solved if we all did that. Now, if you pardon me, I've been on my feet for quite a long time and I'm tired, so I'm going to go sit down and maybe do some knitting.